Hello and welcome to Message Stick. I'm Tricia Morton-Thomas. In 1972, the Tent Embassy was a protest that confronted people with issues of Aboriginal rights on a national and international scale. Chicka Dixon played a major role in the embassy and in the Aboriginal Foundation during that time. He first started working in Sydney during the 1940s as a wharfie and has seen a lot of changes during his time. This is his story.
I'm a 74-year-old activist. I believe every woman on this planet is my sister. I believe every man on this planet is my brother. I know the earth is my mother. Now, if the world accepted that philosophy, there would be no wars, we'd share and care, and most importantly, there'd be no starving children. That's my message. Lived mostly on mission stations and fringe dwellings. My mother come from Wallaga Lake. That's why I identify with the Yuin tribe, because of my mother's people. That's my mother's country. So you identify with your mother's country, okay? But most of my childhood was spent on the south coast. We used to follow the pea picking and the bean. We was cheap source of labour in the pea paddocks and the bean paddocks, and old Whitey didn't want to educate us because they'd lost their cheap pool of labour. So they purposely kept us illiterate. Fortunately, I got educated in 4 universities: Long Bay Jail, Goulburn Jail, Bathurst Jail and any other bloody jail. So there's a lot like me. Sort of had a nomadic existence until I really settled down in the 40s when I came to Sydney and sort of made it my home for the rest of my days. I wasn't political in those days. I didn't become political till 1959. And the reason I didn't become political is I'm an alcoholic and I had to get sober to become political. I threw a bottle of meth away on the 5th of April 1959, 43 years this year. Just got out of jail and decided to become sober. So all the alcoholic cunt went into the movement. It was easy. So I become a fighter for justice, not power. Power corrupts. I'm talking about justice for our people. And that's how I changed. Well, in 1946, I heard about the Aboriginal Progressive Association. They were having their meetings in George Street North. The only all they could get was the Communist Party all. I went down to the meeting, not because I was politically minded, because one of our leaders had 2 good-looking daughters and I was pitching for one. Never won, incidentally, but anyways, at the meeting, you must understand, I was a little skinny black fella, just come off the south coast. It was my birthday, 5th of May 1946. I turned 18. I'll never ever forget it. And I was watching how they were talking and going on, and see, the big thing in those years wasn't street struggle or protest, it was a petition to the King of England. I remember they were aiming for a petition to the King of England. So this man got up, Jack Patton, he was over 6 foot. "Stand up for your rights, brother." Oh, he frightened the hell out of me. I said, "Who's this fella?" So I waited around and yarned to him after. I said, I want to get involved in this thing. He said, "Always remember 2 things. Don't ever join a political party." I never did. "Don't ever abuse a politician. Use a politician." I'm still doing that. So he sort of influenced my lifestyle. He really influenced my lifestyle, Jackie Patton. And the most interesting thing he said, now you must remember, this was 1946. He got up and he said, "Brothers and sisters, we should be setting up an Aboriginal mission station in front of the White Man's Parliament House in Canberra." It happened in 1972. It was called the Tent Embassy. What had happened, the Liberal Party had come out with their policy on land rights. Silly Willie McMahon happened to be the Prime Minister at the time. What it really said, when you cut out the jargon, Aboriginals could lease their own land. That's what it meant. So we had a meeting up in Burton Street, East Sydney, Lynn Craigie's place. We didn't agree with that lease and land, so we proposed some political action. This is what we call the Black Caucus. We used to meet and plan, you see. I wanted to take over Pinchgut Island in the middle of Sydney Harbour. I got outvoted by one vote. The reason I wanted to take over Pinchgut Island is because the Indians had taken over Alcatraz at the same time, and I wanted to put it in the eyes of the world. Then there was a proposal by Billy Craigie to set up a tent embassy. So that's what we did. Canberra woke up next morning with 4 blackfellas under a big blue beach umbrella. Piss and rain it was. What real cold weather. Billy Craigie, Tony Curry, Bertie Williams and Michael Anderson. Those were the 4, shivering. I got leave off the wharves for weekend leave and came up in the bus on the Friday, and the tent was still there, the umbrella. Keppel Enderby was the member for Canberra at the time. He later became a High Court judge. So I said to Kep, what's going on? Why haven't they busted them? He said, you found a gap in their law. They can't move you unless they introduce legislation, so we put up 8 tents then. I became the Minister for Defence. We gave ourselves portfolios. I painted the curb, Aboriginal Embassy staff only, no parking. So we were sending them up. And we stayed there 6 months, that's 6 days. On the 20th of July, they introduced the legislation. There was about 16 of us there. They ripped the tents down, arrested us. 23rd of July, there was about 68. They ripped it down again and arrested some of us. On the 30th of July, there was 1,000 of us there. So we decided to fight them. And they backed off us. So we pulled it down ourselves. It was a sort of a moral victory, you understand? See, we were lucky, our struggle at that period, because what was happening in the 60s, there was a youth revolution going on throughout the world, a youth revolution. There was one old soul in Russia that could put his finger on a button and blow us off the face of the earth. And there was another old B-grade movie actor in America that could put the finger on the button and blow us off the face of the earth. And the youth were saying, you oldies let that happen. So there's a youth revolution. Martin Luther King, let my people go. Gandhi, the Salt March. You see, the world was protesting, and we rode on the shirt tails of that. The Federal Council for the Advancement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, they were the driving force, Faith Bandler and Kath Walker. They were our first national political organisation. Advocacy had membership from all around Australia. We used to meet every Easter, Good Friday to Easter Monday, and talk about HHEE, housing, health, employment, education. And I remember Advocacy starting a campaign in 1960. 7 years later we got it through, 27th of May 1967. There's no way of explaining it true. We cried, some of us. Yeah, after all that time, you know, it was so heartwarming to think, after all these bloody years, 200 years of invasion, we finally become recognised as people in our own country. That was the important thing. We had the whole foundation going then. Oh, Jesus, you talk about celebrations. That's how it was birthed. And the trick was to teach the kids typing and deportment, politics and concert Saturday night, dance Sunday night for the kids. Keep them off the street, because there was no legal service in those days. When I was managing the foundation in '67, I took 4 young blacks and taught them politics for a year. Gary Foley, Gary Williams, Michael Anderson, and who was the other fella? Philip Hall. For a year I taught them. Tuesday nights, then Sunday they'd come up home, up Darlinghurst. Elsa would cook them all this chicken and things. They're only 16, 17. Then I'd teach them local politics, state politics, federal politics, how they worked. But the one I taught them most was public speaking. See, what was concerning me, and it still concerns me, if you look at the political parties, they have branches in suburbs and they train their people politically. If they're any good, they put them into local government. The exception, state. And if they're really exceptional, they give them an easy ride into the federal arena. We're not training people. When we were talking about black power, we were talking about black power. We were talking about the power to run your own destiny, not black violence. They misconstrued it, the media. We were talking about the power to control your own destiny, like medical service, legal service. And it's a funny thing, we was pushing it and they branded us. It's government policy now, it's called self-management. It's the same, that's the one we were talking about. I got an invitation to take a group of my people to China, a delegation to China. I was to lead the delegation. I was able to speak to 6,000 Chinese in the Great Hall of the People in Tiananmen Square. I thought I'd try a little bit of humour. I said, recently you've had an evil man here called Nixon. Have no fear, you've got Dixon. And I talked about our plight. I talked about the infant mortality rate. I think it was about 4 or 5 to 1. I considered that to be white violence and a national scandal. 4 black babies were 9 to 1 white. Now, that was wrong. So I explained what was going on and about the leprosy up in the Kimberleys, proportion per population, one of the highest in the world. I talked about the Black War in Tasmania in the 1840s, H.H. Robertson's account, where they murdered Aboriginal people, and I likened it to Adolf Hitler and the Holocaust. So what I was trying to do was embarrass Australia. We jumped with the idea of pushing our cause. That's the reason we went to China. Not because we were raving Maoists or anything like that, but just to push our cause. I'm a fighter for the cause. So I told you about, in the 40s, petition to the King. I told you about the 60s, street struggle. 70s, tent embassy. You see? So it changes. Struggle takes all sorts of form. You're in struggle because you're telling the message. You understand? See, that's why I was pushing for the black theatre, because you could tell a story in black theatre. You could tell a story in film. I wasn't always thinking that way, but once I started to get involved in the arts, I thought, Jesus, that's a good media to tell our story.
G'day, I'm Ray Cook.
Ray Cook.
Gee, I'm real glad to meet you, bud.
That happened by chance. I was a wharf labourer at the time, and I think it was early 60s, and our famous actor Brian Siren, the Aboriginal actor, talked me into going into this film. It was a series called Pig in the Poke. The story was called Ray's Story. It centred around this young militant coming from the bush and applying for the job with the medical service in Redfern, and I was running the medical service in the movie.
Where is he now, bud?
Oh, he's all right now, but we tried to ring here, but nobody answered the bloody telephone.
I thought I was a great actor, and I finished it. And my brother said, you made me shame in that thing. So I got second thoughts about this acting bloody business, but, oh no, it was a good experience. See, life's full of learning, if you want to learn. That was another learning process in my life. I always talk about the gains. Who wants to talk about the losses? Be positive. Be grateful. In my lifetime, I never ever dreamed I'd see upward of 38 Koreas become lawyers, get a law degree. 26 become doctors. That's happened in my lifetime. And I'm so proud of them. I believed in justice for Aboriginal people. That's what kept me going. And always remember, if you're wrong, apologise. Takes a strong person to apologise if you discover you're wrong. And I've always been that way. I try and encourage young people to stand up and recount it. And you don't have to be road scholar to understand the struggle of your people. You don't have to be. A little bit of brains, a lot of heart, and forget your pocket. That's all you need to do.